Hello, gentlemen, lady. How's everybody doing this evening?
We doing fine, champ. You ready for next week?
Ready? Yeah. I'm ready.
And what's going on, you guys? Welcome to another episode of the Knucklehead Chronicles. This is the origin part 3. I've gone through, and those of you that are listening for the first time, the origin is my life story. Because I've done this before. I've done this twice, well, actually once, and I realized that people were getting inspiration and motivation from my story. So I definitely want to tell my story and help folks. And then and in turn, telling your story also helps you, right? Because sometimes telling your story is cleansing. It really is, and it's just like watching a movie that you love, right? But every time you watch that movie, you miss something in it every time you watch it. So that's why you keep rewatching it. That's why people keep telling their story, because they keep, every time they tell it, they miss something, right? But then it eventually helps them out. So that is the reason why I am doing this, and this is just the relaunch of the podcast. After I get done telling my stories, then I'll bring with the advice. But I want to give you guys a little bit of the backdrop, and this is the reason why I'm doing this, right? So this is part 3. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast at all, I've gone out. Part 1 was about when I was 16, 17, finding out that the father that raised me wasn't my bio, and then part 2, somebody going to the military, things of this nature. And now I'm back home. Now part 3, right here where we at. Let me adjust myself here. Part 3 is rather interesting because at this point in my life, I'm about to, I think I'm 19, 20 maybe at this point. And I was home with my parents and didn't really want to be there, right? And then, but that's how life made it. And at that point, I had to go back to my parents and go live with them and catch some lessons that I missed the first time I was there. Remember that movie I was telling you about? You keep playing the same movie because you miss something. So I was home, and I didn't have anybody. I was just kind of living life. This was, I think, around this time was the very first time I contemplated suicide, because I was just so lonely, and I was a crappy father, and I didn't know what to do. My mother and my father, and I loved them. My stepdad and my mother, God rest her soul. I loved them. But they did not prepare me for this world, right? So a lot of things that I learned on the fly, on my own. So I was extremely, like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And so one day I was out visiting some family, and I had a cousin. I think I was telling you, I give you a little bit of it in part 2, but I had a cousin who came up to me and was like, "Hey, I got this great young lady that you should meet." And I'm like, "Man, ain't nobody got time for that." You know what I'm saying? And I'm hurting. I'm still, reeling through the first part of my life. But see, it was unspoken. And see, a lot of men go through that unspoken phase because they don't want to, because men have a real problem with telling their story, and they don't want to be they don't want to be exposed. I guess that's the word. They don't want to be judged. They don't want none of that. Truth is, I was afraid. I was really afraid to let that's why, we wear this tough facade, and we wear this, I wear this breastplate of, non-fear, man. Let me tell you something, man. Some of us walking around here, we just big balls of fear, And so I was like, yeah, sure, man, whatever, So we messed around. We met. I met her. I think it was the next weekend. I met her. It was a blind date type deal, and I met her, and it was like, okay, she's not bad. She had a little bit of the bow legs. She already had a son by the time I met her. But apparently, she had a wedding invitation, or she was getting ready to get married, but the young man stood her up at the altar, and that didn't go good. Apparently, so she was in the same way I was reeling in life. She was reeling in life in a different direction. I was healing. I was reeling because I just didn't know what to do, and she was probably reeling because she was stood up. She was hurt. Women are a little bit more emotional than men are, or so they say. So I meet her, and I instantly fell for her. Now, looking back on that particular moment, 20 years later, was I really head over heels for her, or was I head over heels in love with the fact that I had somebody in my life and I wasn't alone no more? That was, but I didn't figure that out until, 20 years later. At the time, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't in love, right? And I'm not saying I didn't. I'm not saying that I wasn't in love with her at one point or another, but at the initial outset, it was not love, right? It was the sheer fact that I had someone in my life. And I think that was the same for her. She's never said that to me. She's never admitted that to me. But I think that was on my side of the spectrum. That's exactly what was going on. Is that she's just, nah. She was great, but I had my first daughter with her. I'm sorry, my second daughter with her. Oh Lord, George, I'm messing the story up already. My oldest daughter's already born. So the first daughter that I had in wedlock, Brianna, that's my baby. She's she was born, and I can tell you, we struggled as a freshly as a new couple, and there's several reasons why we struggled. Right, first we struggled because we were both young, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing with our lives. Right, that's the first thing. Second thing, we struggled because we didn't know each other. I didn't know her. I knew her from a hookup, and we kind of just delve into something because it was just something to do. You know what I'm saying? It was just because I didn't want to be alone, or she didn't want to be alone, or whatever. She's looking for a daddy for a baby. I don't know. Right? I don't know what it was for her, but on my end, it was, I ain't got to go home to mama, no more. And when I tell you, man, we struggled, baby. We got our first apartment, and it was back in my, my hometown, and it was a little 2-bedroom duplex. We had a crazy cat lady for a neighbor. I never saw her. We lived there for, I think, a little over a year, maybe a year, and I never saw this lady ever. So, she did have a bunch of cats though, and we struggled. We struggled, and I barely worked. I don't know if resentment set in early with her, but it was just a tormented mess. And how we survived for the most part was during tax season. When she got her taxes, we would splurge when she got her taxes. The rest of the year though, we sucked. We didn't take care of no bills, or I didn't take care of any bills, didn't take care of the home, nothing. And I spun my wheels for well, we were together total and we were together for a year. Okay. But we were still legally married for years after, but it's neither here nor there at this point in the game. So the point that I'm going to make through this thing is that if you're in something right now and you know that it's not for you, get out. If you know that this person that you're not really feeling right, if you went into it with the wrong intention, get out. If you find yourself having to lie to this person to appease them, or you have to find you lie to this person to make them feel good, get out. Because this is not the move. And I'm not sure what happened here. So that's what I did. We struggled because I just didn't, I wasn't real with her, and I'm sure she wasn't real with me either. And so I'm not sure what happened to my music there. Yeah, it's gonna bug me. Okay. Sorry about that. Maybe I'll. Okay. Amazing. Okay, I just do it at the music now. So yeah, we were just a total mess, right? So we like I said, we survived strictly on her taxes. We lived the good life the first 3 months, because she got taxes, and that's what it was. But there was no responsibility. There was no accountability for nothing. She got pregnant with my daughter, and it was just god awful, right? Not the fact she got pregnant. It was god awful. It was just the circumstances behind it. It was just, we didn't, golly, man, I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. And that's just one of the things that, you can't take it back. It's happened. That's what it is. We ended up getting evicted from the apartment because we didn't pay rent, right? Like I told you, we lived high off the hog for about those 3 months during tax season. But after that, we didn't pay any rent. I think I worked at a job. I can't even remember the job that I was working then. But we ended up losing, so we got evicted. So we ended up moving in with her mother, because she wanted us to be together, and she was pregnant with the baby. I think the baby was Brianna was already born by the time this happened. And so we go and we move in with her mama. Now her mother did not like me. She did not care for me at all, right? But she put up a good front. Come on in, you guys move in and be a family and all that jazz, right? Now at this point, I'm working. I got a pretty good job, right? But it's one of those manual labor jobs where it was like heavy lifting and all that. So we did that, and we stayed there. I actually had 2 jobs there. I was working at a plastic company. They made rolls of plastic, like the black plastic you find like in gardens and stuff. That kind of plastic, trash bags, things of that nature. So I worked there. The place was called AEP. Never will forget, it's in North Carolina. And I worked at I'll tell you about AEP. So I worked there, making pretty good money. Came home, I was helping her pay, rent or whatever, starting to get some responsibility, but not a lot, right? So just one day, out of the blue, her mother comes home and says, he got to go. That's what she tells my wife, my first wife. Yeah, he got to go. He can't stay here no more. I was like, what? Huh? Where'd they come from? And so she told me, she came in the room and she said, Mama said you got to leave. I said, say what now? She said, Mama said you got to leave. And so I packed up my duffel bag. I didn't have any suitcases, right? I packed up my duffel bag. And I got ready to go. Now, my wife says, I told you she already had a son. Not mine biologically. She already had him. And she was like, okay, take Tony. That's her son's name. Take Tony with you. What? Like, But it was okay because my family loved Tony, as a baby. Tony a grown man now, but, back then he was a baby. And I was like, sure, I'll take him. We would still see each other, on a sneak tip because, even though her mama didn't like me, we were still together, but we were just on some sneak tips type stuff. I mean, we would go and stay, like on the weekends that we would get, I would see her in the back. I would see her and Brianna because she kept Brianna. But we would meet together. I get together on the weekends and we would go stay with my grandma, for the weekend, sleep on the floor, make a pal on the floor and all that. Brianna had a pack and play, and, all that. Just a cavalcade of nonsense, right? And I'm telling you, thinking about this stuff now, 20, 30, almost 30 years removed from it, it's like, seriously, I did that? We did that? I went through that, but you know what? I just missed a whole part of the story. Let's back up a little bit if I can. When my first wife was pregnant with our daughter, her mother was she was a strong advocate for her to leave me, and we were struggling. Like I said, I mean, we struggled my whole first marriage. We struggled. So at one point in time, we lived with our parents. I lived with my parents, and but this is before she had or birthed Brianna, and the only reason why she stayed with my mother would allow her to stay with us was because her doctor was closer to where we live versus where her mother lived. So my mom was like, all right, she can stay here. I mean, and whatever till the baby's born. And we was getting excited. The baby was coming. It's almost, she's at that 9-month mark. So it's any day now, right? So at this point, I'm working at a good job, making some pretty good money. I smelled like crap, but I made some pretty good money. So just one weekend, we got paid. And I went and bought the baby everything she needed in one trip, off one paycheck. Crib, pack and play, clothes, bottles, whatever. You name it, she had it. So I get all this stuff, and I bring it home. Now I'm proud. This is a proud daddy moment, right? Because I wasn't there for my first daughter. I was actually, I was there for my second and tried to do for her. And so I had all the stuff that I bought, just, in the room that we shared, right? And I remember going to work one day, I remember kissing the baby, goodbye. Daddy'll be home later. And I didn't know that her mother had been in her ear the whole time that she was there. So I go to work and work a 16-hour shift, come home. And my mother, I walk in the door, and my mother is I never forget this. And she was sitting on the other side, on one side of the couch. And my mother was a very emotional person. And she was crying on the end of the couch. I said, Mom, what's wrong with you? And she says, she left. She took the baby and left. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And she was like, she said, go look in the room. Go look in the room. And I looked in the room and there was nothing. She took the baby. She took all of the baby stuff that I just bought. Everything gone. And don't you know that I didn't hear nothing, a word, a peep out of my first wife for, I think, 3 or 4 weeks. No explanation. Just gone. It's like she kidnapped her. That's what it seemed like. But I knew she had went home, to her mother. But she didn't. It didn't bother to tell me anything. And so, and we're talking about, and the reason why I'm talking about this is because, all of this stuff just compounded with the stuff that I went through when I was a kid. So none of this was dealt with, right? I was just angry at this point in the game. I'm like, why would you take my child at least and not say anything to me at least? Nothing? You couldn't formulate any words to say to me? And it was beyond crazy. But nonetheless, I made it through that. It was hard though, but I made it through that. So again, I had her son. We were still separated. So we lived separated for the longest time. I think we lived together separate. We lived separate for a little over a year after that. And one day we decided, we want to be together. We want to be together. Now this time I'm working in a whole different area. We've been separated, so I've started to, my eyes have started wandering, and I started dating this lady. Now, the first time I told this story, because I try to keep names confidential and private. So the first time I told this story, it was people who have heard this before would know who I'm talking about. But I'll use the same name in this time. In this time that I did the first time, I started dating a lady, and she was 26 years my senior. Yeah, awkward pause, right? 26 years my senior, but she didn't tell me that, in the beginning. But nonetheless, we'll get to her in part 4. But so, like I said, my eyes started wandering. I was just kind of doing things and like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Da, 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 da. So, we decided that we were going to be together, but I really didn't want to. It was a resentment thing. It was like, I was kind of mad at her. So I said, yeah, let me go ahead and play along with this. But I was pissed at her. Like, how could you leave? So we got an apartment in the city, in the city of Charlotte. Anybody that knows Charlotte, there's a place in Charlotte on the I think it's on the east side of Charlotte called Greertown. And Greertown was known as kind of rough, a little bit of ghetto, a little bit of hood there. So we got a house there smack in the middle of Greertown. We signed a lease. She moved in first. I never moved in that place with her. I didn't. Because I had got with Minnie Pearl. That's what I called her in the first time I told the story. Minnie Pearl. And like I said, she's doing, I want y'all to catch this. She was 26 years my senior. At the time that I met her, I was 25. Do the math. Okay. But just to give you a little bit of snippet of what's part 4 is that when I met her, I was 25. We dated for almost 6 months. I think her birthday came 6 months after we got together. And so, by this time we moved in together. She got her young bull, I got me a cougar, And so her birthday comes around. And so I get her, I'm thinking she's like 40, 44, 45, I was okay with, some of that age difference, but, so I get her birthday cake and, had a number on there and she was like, yeah, I got something to tell you. And I was like, what? And she was like, well, I'm not that age. I'm this age. I was like, what? Oh, baby girl, why you didn't tell me that? So it was just really bananas. But that's, again, neither here nor there. And so we was back to my first wife. So I left her abandoned in that apartment. Abandoned. I never moved in with her. Never. She signed the lease, and I went to go see her, one time in the place, but I never moved in with her. Didn't give her an explanation. Didn't do nothing. Just left. And that's how it ended, kind of. But it didn't really end, because we still saw each other sparingly. But that's neither here nor there either. So that's part 3. We're gonna get into part 4 tomorrow. We're gonna get into a little bit of Minute Pearl. We're gonna get into the tumultuous relationship I had with this woman. But my first wife she was not all bad. We both made mistakes. We were both young, and we didn't know what life was about. None of it made sense. But I grew as a man, but didn't know I was growing as a man when I was going through it. It took me, years to realize that I actually grew. But anyway, I hope you're enjoying the story so far. This is the origin part 3. Stay tuned for origin part 4. This will be found on all podcasting platforms. If you want to check out my podcast, it's actually on buzzsprout.com. You can always go to that website and just do a search with the Knucklehead Chronicles and you can find me. All right. But until next time, you guys have a great, great day. And we'll talk to you next time.